My daughter-in-law offered to take me to lunch on my 77th birthday. Instead, we drove for hours. When I asked where we were going, she said, "It's a place for women like you. You'll be safe." I texted one word to my lawyer from the car, "Now." By the time she arrived at destination, cops were already waiting. The morning light filtered through my kitchen window as I adjusted the collar of my indigo dress, the one with tiny pearl buttons that had belonged to my mother. My fingers trembled slightly, not from age, but from something I couldn't quite name. Today was my 77th birthday, and for the first time in decades, I felt like prey. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Happy birthday, Mother Eileen. Marsha's voice had been syrupy sweet when she called yesterday, my daughter-in-law of 15 years who normally communicated through my son Percy and terse, obligatory exchanges. "I'd love to take you to lunch tomorrow, just the two of us. It's time we got to know each other better." The invitation felt wrong, like finding a snake coiled in a basket of roses. Marsha had never shown interest in knowing me better. In fact, she'd spent years systematically erasing me from family gatherings, holiday photos, and my own son's life. But something in her tone made me accept. Perhaps it was curiosity, perhaps it was the foolish hope that at 77 I might finally matter to someone in my family. Again, I'd lived in this house for 43 years, raised 3 children here, buried a husband from the front parlor. Now it felt like a museum of my own irrelevance. My youngest, Harry, lived in California and called twice a year, Christmas and my birthday, duty calls that lasted exactly long enough to assuage his guilt. My daughter Lori lived just 2 towns over, but treated me like an embarrassing relic, visiting only when she needed something, and Percy, my firstborn, the child I'd sacrificed everything for. He'd become Marsha's puppet, dancing to her tune while she slowly, methodically cut at every string that connected him to me. The doorbell rang at exactly noon. Marsha stood on my porch wearing designer sunglasses and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was 4,515 years younger than Percy, with a kind of polished appearance that money could buy and confidence could perfect. Everything about her was calculated, from her honey blonde highlights to her French manicure to the way she tilted her head when she spoke as if everyone else was slightly simple. "You look lovely, Eileen," she said, though her eyes never met mine. "Ready for your special day?" I grabbed my purse, an old leather bag that had seen better decades, and followed her to the gleaming black SUV in my driveway. The interior smelled like expensive perfume and leather conditioner. Marsha's world always smelled clean, antiseptic, devoid of the messy sense of real living. "Where are we going?" I asked, as we pulled away from my house. Through the passenger window, I watched my neighborhood disappear: the mailbox I'd painted last spring, Mrs. Schumer's garden, where she always waved, the bus stop, where I caught the 42 downtown twice a week for groceries. "It's a surprise," Marsha said, her manicured fingers drumming against the steering wheel. "Somewhere special. You'll love it." We drove through town, past the diner where Teddy and I used to have coffee every Sunday morning, past the library, where I'd volunteered for 20 years, past the pharmacy, where young Felix always asked about my arthritis with genuine concern. Then we kept driving, and driving, the familiar landmarks of my life fell away like shed skin. We were on the interstate now, heading north, and something cold settled in my chest. This wasn't the way to any restaurant. I knew Marsha's knuckles were white against the steering wheel, and she hadn't spoken in 20 minutes. "Marsha," I said, keeping my voice steady, despite the alarm bells ringing in my head, "where exactly are we going?" She glanced at me quickly, then back at the road. "I told you, it's a surprise. We've been driving for over an hour. What restaurant is this far away?" Her laugh sounded like breaking glass. "Not a restaurant. I mean, somewhere better, somewhere permanent." The word hung in the air between us like a threat. I felt my body go very still, the way a rabbit freezes when it senses the hawk's shadow. Every instinct I'd honed over 7 decades of living screamed danger. But I forced myself to think, to plan. My phone was in my purse, resting on my lap. With careful, deliberate movements, I unzipped the top and slipped my hand inside my arthritic fingers, found the familiar shape of my iPhone, a gift from Harry last Christmas that I'd initially resisted, but now treasured. I'd learned to text despite my children's assumptions that I was too old for technology. "It's a place for women like you," Marsha continued, her voice taking on that horrible patronizing tone she used when she thought she was being kind. "You'll be safe there, taken care of. You won't have to worry about maintaining that big old house anymore, or cooking for yourself, or being alone." My thumb found on the phone's home button. The screen lit up, and I angled it carefully so Marsha couldn't see. Years of late-night anxiety had taught me to navigate this device in the dark, and muscle memory guided me now. Messages, recent conversations. There's Sean Wahlberg, my attorney, a good man who'd handled Teddy's estate and had been helping me with some arrangements over the past several months. I typed one word now, the message sent with a soft whoosh that was swallowed by the road noise. Marsha was still talking, something about how Percy thought this was best, how they found a lovely facility with activities and other women my age, how I shouldn't be stubborn about accepting help. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was remembering the conversation I'd had with Sean 3 months ago, when I'd first started to suspect what my family was planning, The hushed phone calls that stopped when I entered the room, the way Percy had started asking pointed questions about my finances, my medications, my ability to live independently, the real estate agent who'd accidentally knocked on my door asking if I'd ever considered selling. Eileen, you need to understand, Sean had said, leaning forward in his leather chair, his expression grave. If they're planning to have you declared incompetent or in need of care, they could move very quickly. These things can happen fast, especially if they have medical professionals who will support their claims. You need to be prepared. So I had prepared, not just legally, though Sean had helped me put safeguards in place that would shock my children when they discovered them, but emotionally, I'd known this day would come. I'd seen it in Marcia's calculating eyes, in Percy's guilty avoidance, in the way they spoke about me as if I weren't there. The highway stretched ahead of us, carrying me away from everything I'd ever known. But as I watched the mile markers flash by, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: power.